Sup guys, welcome to the April 2022 Tidal Gardens live show. How's everyone doing? Things here are just a little bit different. I kind of threw this message into chat, but this is it's not a new broadcasting software, it's the same broadcasting software that I've always used. But it's like this very big update, and a lot of stuff, at least in the interface, has changed. So it's probably a good thing that I'm starting off. Let me go ahead and throw the countdown timer up. We start always a little bit early just so that we can iron out any audio or visual weirdness. But please, by all means, let me know if the audio sounds okay, specifically because I'm here looking at like my audio meters, and usually they're not quite so sensitive. I'm seeing like this signal that's very bouncy, and it goes way down lower than I'm used to. So if you could just give me a holler. I know that there's like, at least for my from my chat and stuff, the stream has like a 30-second delay from when I say it to when you guys see it, so I'll be patient. Okay, so the first little bits of feedback are coming in. Sound is good. That's promising. So if you guys are familiar with like like the sound meters, they usually kind of like hang out below like minus 36 dB, and so I never really see them hop around unless I speak. But they changed the thing so the meters go all the way down to like negative 60 dBs, which nothing really should be down there. So you're hearing like the reverberation of just like the air, just every little possible thing that's just like subsonic seemingly. So I see this like jumpy signal. I'm like, what is going on? I really hope that that's not just messing with everybody's headphones or speakers or whatever, but it looks like I was just overreacting a little bit. How's everybody doing? Hopefully your guys' weekend is going smoothly. I'm very excited about doing this show. It's usually we end up skipping a show here or there, and so it's been a long time since I've done a show, but this one, I mean, we did a show last month and we're kind of continuing the pace for this month, so looking forward to it. Calypso's Reef, just your visual quality of yourself is poor. I'm going to see if anybody else is having that problem, because usually that adjusts according to your internet connection. So that might be on your end. You should be able to see a 1080p 60 version of this stream. And the source should be 4K, so it should be very, very sharp. Unless for some reason we are not broadcasting at said resolution, which I just checked, and we are. That might be on you. Okie doke, let's see. Real quick, while we're waiting for the countdown, I do have to say my quick highs and hellos and thank yous to the Patreon crowd, so let's knock that down real fast. So real quick, thank you to Big Lord Chi, Bill Russell, Brandy Camp, Harkins Aquatics, Jeremy Altman, Elaine Martinozzi. I mess it up every single time I go through this list. Every time. Alan Jackson, Chuck Meyer, Don Bowman, Ernie Wallace, Greg Zimmerman, Jordan Marty, Keith Singer, Lisa Clow, Michael Shelley, Puddle Aquatics, Rebecca Hull, Reef Infidel, Skylar Korn, Sue Hemmons, The Classroom Reef, Thomas Tarrant, Tim Garner, and Trevor Joseph Overbeck. And on the YouTube member side, we have Herb777, Keith Holland, Jacob Reicherson, Justin Harden, Jay Place, 328 Reef, and 2 Please Coral Reefs. So thank you all very much. Thank you all. Okay, watch check that. No, nothing this time. No watch. At some point, I really would like to get another watch when I hit some personal or professional milestone. But real talk, my bills are really big right now. we hadn't seen our plumber in about a year, but they finally started back up again working on some projects here. And the first day that they showed up, they brought over a group of about 6 plumbers, and they worked the entire 8-hour day. So you can already imagine what 6 plumbers for a full day of work might cost, right? And then they worked for 5 more consecutive days after that. So I got a nice chunky bill just yesterday. So watch check is going to have to wait a little bit longer. Oh, Wilmar, $8 super chat. Thank you so much. Have a Starbucks coffee. Also have a great live sale. I appreciate it, Will. Thank you so much. Your tie is crooked. You've been saying that. It's not crooked. I know it's not. I'm not even gonna look. I know. Let's see. So the plumbers have done this incredible job. See, I'm not even mad about the big bill when it comes to the plumbers, because I already know the type of materials that I'm using. We're using primarily gigantic size Schedule 80, and whenever you deal with gigantic size Schedule 80, the bill for that is already going to be massive. Case in point, we're using like a 4-inch drain to pick up all the drain lines from the new aquarium. So it's a combination of 3 and 4-inch, but the main big thing is a 4-inch Schedule 80 drain. The pipe itself, I forget exactly how much it costs. It might be like $4 per foot, and there's like 100 something odd feet. But every single time you need to do a fitting in 4-inch, it's absolutely absurd. I think that in my last building update video, I held up what a 4-inch bulkhead looks like that goes into the sump, and it is this big. Like it's the size of like a pizza, because like the hole that it makes is for 4-inch pipe, but the actual giant thing, it's enormous. So even something as simple as like an elbow, like a 90 elbow, that's like $17 wholesale. So every single time you make a little corner or a T or whatever, it's just like that bill just keeps on going and going. So yeah, I definitely, I'm definitely spending some money on the plumbing alone of this new building. Anytime you have like valves or true union ball valves in any size that gets bigger than like 1 inch, that definitely adds to the cost. But like I said, I'm super happy with it, and I'm also super happy that we decided to not do it ourselves, because if we were to screw up some part of that plumbing, cutting it out and redoing it would be shockingly expensive. And we're also, we have a lot less space than in the previous build, because we wanted the tanks to be lower. And so there's not a lot of room. So imagine like all this big chunky plumbing, but the clearances that they have to work in, that, just from the distance from the pipes themselves, sometimes they only have like a 1/2 inch to work with. So it's a very tight squeeze that they have to, to hit all these like precision marks. And so far it's been absolutely amazing. Okay, you have a little bit under 2 minutes left before the coral selling portion of the show goes. If y'all are in the US and want to partake in the live sale and don't know how this works, go ahead and go to tidalgardens.com/live, and there's an FAQ there. That same page will also have thumbnails of all the corals that we're going to be putting up for the show today. But like I said, if you want to hang out and join us for the conversation, we will be going through each one individually. So by all means, come hang out. I didn't even see your comment, acropora corals, but yeah, go to tidalgardens.com/live, and you can create an account and purchase it just like any other item. You'll just see each one of these things individually. Shipping is the flat rate $29.99, continental US, and it's free over $250. You'll have to fully check out in order to get the item. So just having it in your shopping cart is not good enough. That does not do anything for you. You have to fully check out. So when you're selecting the shipping option, select adding to an existing order if you're going to be placing multiple orders. That's the general rundown, but by all means, check out the FAQ that explains it in a little bit more detail. Okay. Almost ready. 8, 7, 6. All right. Hopefully that transition went pretty well. We have something like 230 some odd corals to get through. So I figure we will be done in about 2.5 hours. So buckle up, guys. Grab a drink. I've already had like a couple of coffees and a juice this morning, so I'm all set. Arlene Luna says that she's new to the hobby, love gonies, got a rainbow goni. Yeah, gonies are pretty awesome. That's probably one of my favorite groups of coral right now. There's a whole bunch that are doing really well for us, and we're trying to kind of collect them and add to that collection. It's actually really nice. After all that talk about plumbing, we're getting to the point where a lot of like the big projects are starting to either dry up or slow down to the point where I can focus a little bit more on coral acquisition, and that's been a lot of fun lately, because that part of the hobby has kind of been lost on me for so long, because I've just been doing like building and business development and infrastructure development and project management for so long now, that a lot of the fun of doing a business like this is going out and down and hunting down all the really, really, really cool corals. And that's something that I haven't done in such a long time, but I'm just now really getting back into it. And there's certainly some really cool gonies that are on that list that I'm trying to get. The other thing that we're kind of messing around with is I'm trying to get a little bit better about naming conventions when it comes to like the species of corals, because there's, for the longest time, there's basically two sets of names, right? There's the industry name for stuff, and then there's the scientific name for stuff. And you might not really think of it, but both of those things change quite a lot. Now, on the industry naming of stuff, so for example, this for the longest time has been called a fireworks samacora. It is very likely a Leptocerus and not a samacora at all. And also, when it comes to like scientific nomenclature and scientific taxonomy, corals get shifted around fairly frequently as new data is kind of uncovered, and it's like, okay, well actually these similarities make it more in this category rather than this category. That stuff happens a lot. So we kind of have to toe this fine line between the scientific reference stuff and the industry specific stuff, because our goal is, when people are looking for a particular coral, is to find it with us. And so that kind of comes for both shopping and for care requirements. So we're probably going to be, for a lot of these things, using both sets of names for stuff. Like, for example, like this is like a lava flow. This also, it's currently a samacora, but this too might be a Leptocerus. Yeah, tough to say. I even got like a book that helps identify a lot of these things that's more or less up to date. However, it's tough because a lot of the books that are really good about scientific identification and taxonomy, a lot of their images are from like the ocean. They're natural, in their environment photographs, and so they will never look like something that's in an aquarium. Everything is going to be brown, Everything is going to be in the yellowest daylight. So you kind of have to just like, use your imagination and just kind of focus on the shape of the polyp, the shape of the colony, things like that. But like I said, that's something that hopefully over time we'll get slightly better at. We still call certain things acans when they're not acans. We still clearly with Leptoceras, Samicora, Pavona, like all those things, it's a little bit of a jumble yet, but slow turning of the ship, right? Guanc Reefing, greetings all from Maryland. Welcome, Guanc. So actually, real quick, let's play a little game. Let's do some straw polling here. If scientific names are super important to you, or actually, how should I phrase this poll? Which do you guys prefer? The super accurate scientific names, if you agree with that, put a 1 in chat, or the very colorful trade names, like the electric Oopa Loopa something or the other, type 2 in chat. So 1 for the ultra and I realize that there's like a huge gray area in between, right? That's kind of like where we're living. But yeah, just for the sake of this convo, 1 for the super scientific stuff, 2 for the super industry flavor text. So give me the 1s and 2s in chat. Okay, Nature Bats last one. All right, okay. So far it seems to be like a pretty even split, like dead on. Okay, no, here we go. KB's Reef, Gabriel, Guanc, Blue Dog, Reefing Manny, like a big stretch of 1s in there. Okay, interesting. Abraham Estrada 1 and 2. That sounds like a 2. If you're okay with number 2 at all, that's a 2. Yeah, sometimes I'll tell you what, when it comes to identifying like what it is somebody's even talking about, a lot of times it helps just to have the trade name, a trade name that is readily used. So, for example, the previous coral that we just looked at was a meteor shower Cyphastria. I think pretty much everybody agrees on what that is. This angry orchard Cyphastria, I don't know if that's like a well accepted name. So this one might be like more of a gray area sort of thing. So if somebody were to email and ask a question about a certain Cyphastria, and I'm like, well, what does it look like? And they start to describe it, that sometimes doesn't really help me. But if they were to say, oh, I'm looking for a meteor shower, it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about now. Or like this purple people eater Cyphastria, it's like, I know exactly what they're talking about. But where it gets squirrely is when 10 different vendors name the same coral 10 different things for like brand equity online and all that stuff. That's where things get a little difficult to sort through. Let's see. A bit salty. I got charged twice for shipping, Dan. What do I do? Okay, so in the future, when you're checking out, select adding to an existing order. Otherwise, it will charge you shipping every single time. Now, when you're done shopping, just send us an email and just say, hey, I got charged shipping twice. Send it to support@tidalgardens.com and we will refund the shipping charge. But that will likely be done once we're actually printing out your shipping labels, so that's going to be either Monday or Tuesday or something like that. So whenever it comes time to ship, that's when we will reconcile all the shipping stuff. The worst offender was when somebody got charged shipping 6 times. Six times. Okay. Arlene Luna says, naming the corals keeps it fun. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely at that point where I can't name anything anymore. I've like lost any and all creativity. And then, so Ben for a little while named some stuff that we didn't know what they were. and then he got burnt out, and I think that we're up to our third string coral naming person. Let's see. Key for Dog. Then, after creating an account, are we now able to purchase corals? Should be. Should be. Lisa from Lacry Fine Art. Must resist more coral. Just bought 10 from you a couple weeks ago. Thank you so much. Don't resist too hard. We appreciate all the patronage. Okay, Hillbilly Reefer. Hey Than, aiptasia breakouts stressed my SPS coral dominated tank, which in turn led to slower growth rate, which caused an alk spike in nutrient load system. Kaboom, crash. Whoa. I don't really know if, I mean, for an aiptasia usually don't bother coral that much. I mean, I can imagine if aiptasia went like fully sexual reproductive mode, which they can do, by the way. Like, so that's usually why people say, like, oh, if you see aiptasia, try to deal with it immediately, because if you don't deal with it when they're like in their ones and twos number, they can go just do broadcast sexual breeding, and they'll just show up on any and everything throughout the tank, in your plumbing, in your overflows, everywhere suddenly, and that's when it tends to become a problem. But having said that, for them to actually cause like a huge problem for your other corals, that's a tougher one, because believe it or not, their sting isn't that strong. It's like enough to be annoying, but it's usually not enough to be killing stuff. So I would probably say, yeah, I mean, you probably want to have something in your tank that constantly eats aiptasia, but for it to cause a crash, that's a little out there. Skill Master, where do you see the future of coral collection going? The future for coral collection, I would say, is not bright. A lot of the different geographies, now this is coming from somebody that does not import whatsoever. I do not talk with individual coral collectors overseas in any geography. However, you know, being in the industry for quite a long time now, I would say, and I've worked with several wholesalers, and you know, we've done like consulting projects with other people that do wholesale. So I'm in contact with a lot of folks that are very active in that way. And everything that I'm hearing from different geographies is that a lot of that activity is getting restricted. The way that restriction occurs is different from place to place, but the trend is not, oh, let's open up and increase the amount of corals that are getting harvested. That ain't it. Everywhere is in some way, shape, or form trying to restrict trade, and for different motivations. But yeah, it's not looking fantastic. So a couple anecdotes that I can probably share. Like Indonesia, for example, has been like the Wild West for a really long time. A few years ago, they had a full shutdown to try to clean up a lot of that stuff, right? And I think that the person that was in charge of that ministry to administer all that, I think eventually he went to jail, and so it became Wild West again. And then now it's looking like they want to transition away from a lot of like the straight up ocean caught stuff, ocean harvested, and go more towards mariculture. But you know, corruption exists in this world, and you have a lot of black markety type activity going on, where it's like, well, if you had some of this coral from before that's technically not really on the list, you can sell your old stuff that you already had. So in theory, acanthophilia have not been on the menu for years now. And so there should be none available after years of people selling their backstock of acanthophilia. Right now, there's more acanthophilia in the industry than there's ever been, period, that I've ever seen. So clearly, it's like the secret ingredient is crime, that sort of thing. So, yeah, that's Indo. Australia manages a lot through like a quota system, and they're getting into a little bit of weirdness over there because they have like several big collectors, and these big collectors they have like the biggest quota, and so their philosophy is we're going to like collect a wide swath of different types of corals, and then we'll use our quota in that way. But then the government released like a few very, very small quotas to a couple of, not maybe like a dozen or so other collectors. And the problem with that is that for them to actually make a profit, they have to be more selective in what they're collecting. So what ends up happening is they are only interested in gold torches. They are only interested in rainbow Homophilia australis, so scolies, right? So right now, I guess there's a huge difficulty finding any gold torches in the ocean, because it's not like the big collectors necessarily. It's the really little collectors that are just laser focused on one kind of coral. So there's talk of all the quotas for 2023 already being expired right now. Those weight kilogram quotas are used up already, and they're supposed to talk about bumping it up in June or July, but they haven't. So if they don't, all of this stuff from Australia just might dry the heck up. So that's just on the supply end from the geographies that are actually doing the collecting. So this is our third year in COVID land, and that has had some serious issues with supply chain and logistics. So you probably, if you are, I don't know, adulting in any way, shape, or form, you probably know in some way how supply chains are affecting you. The way that it's affecting the wholesale collecting and coral trade end of the spectrum is the cost of flights are going way up, and the number of flights getting canceled is going way up. So usually, from what I understand from my wholesaler friends, they have to be in constant scramble mode to find flights for their shipments. Because what tends to happen is, if you've probably followed in the news, it's United canceled 1,000 flights over the weekend, that sort of thing, right? That happens every now and again. It's because we can't fulfill some need, and these airplanes can't go into the air. Well, if you have a coral shipment and your flight gets canceled, in the past, pre-COVID, you could probably get it on the next flight later that day, so it's a delay of a couple hours. Now that delay might be 2 days, and those corals, after 2 days of delay, will not survive. So these wholesalers have to constantly be on red alert to try to just to get the corals into the States. And even once they get into the States, get through customs, that last leg to get to their airport can be a challenge. And sometimes one guy that I talked to, they said that they had to give away an entire shipment where it landed because there were no flights coming. So they just called one of their customers and just said, hey, look, if you're able to go get these boxes, they are yours. So imagine that. You got to save the shipment somehow. Yeah, so it's been difficult. So really long answer to your question. But for the foreseeable future, I would say it's a very dark, gloomy cloud over that entire activity. All right, Sammy31D. Ball anemones. Worry? No worry? Online seems to say they're just filter feeders, no issue, typically opinion. If we're talking about So there's a bunch of different ones, right? So there's like Pseudocoronactus, which are like the really cute little red strawberry anemones, um, or the mega giant like ultra para. I just lost the name. The really big guys, right? Uh, so those guys can get like 12 inches long and stuff, and they're like hyper aggressive. I would say to not worry. Like the ones that just come as hitchhikers, generally speaking, if you can see them, they're probably going to die. They like to live in complete darkness, and every single time we try to flip them up to feed them and stuff like that, they don't make it. They don't like it. The big giant ones, you'll be very lucky to have them, and we have like a special tank just for them, and we're one of the only people in the country that even has any for sale. So if you have one of those, you should consider yourself lucky. Again, Sammy D. Malaysia, no bueno. Malaysia is messed up. I'll get to that in just a sec, because Nick Grant just before you just says, how does one buy, in an email or just comment? Yes, go to tidalgardens.com/live and check the FAQ there. I want to get past a couple more of these topics. So Malaysia, the reason why people are, so right now there's a lot of really cool corals coming out of quote unquote Malaysia, but pretty much no wholesaler that I know of deals with Malaysia, because I guess like their paperwork is highly sketch, and that's not even to say that they're necessarily illegal or anything like that, but it is so highly suspect, and there's so much at risk if you are importing stuff improperly. Like Fish and Wildlife here aren't messing around. They want to throw you in jail. Like they really, really, really treat you like you are stealing pandas and are about to cause an international incident. And so like if anything goes wrong, they're going to be at your door trying to like mess with you big time. And a lot of these people that are doing wholesale, a lot of them are just straight up millionaires. They don't need to take this risk of some really like, skeevy paperwork from Malaysia. So they don't even deal with it. They'll let somebody else take that risk. So literally there's like cool stuff coming from there, allegedly. And I know that there are, folks that have access to a lot of import that don't have that stuff because they have no appetite to deal with just the risk involved. So for example, there's like some really cool acropora, like the Jumanji, like acropora speciosa and stuff like that. I would love to get one of those. And I asked like some serious business acro collector types, and they're like, nope, we don't have that yet either. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if they don't have it with their resources, something is definitely up, because it's one of the hottest acros to try to go get. And like I said, if those guys don't have it, yeah, I don't know. Widow Bass, how are you able to start your new frag systems without any major algae type issues that most of us deal with starting a new system? Regards, Dennis. We have algae issues if we try to do something like with rock or anything like that. Really what you just have to just get through that initial stage, because what really controls that is just more system maturity. For example, if we were to start a new tank, we're going to get hair algae. And it's only when the microfauna really start to propagate and proliferate, when you have enough herbivores to manage things, that's when your algae issues go away. Having said that, we can we use these trays, they kind of look like this trackpad. And they have, all these holes for our frags, and they're very easy for us to clean. We can soak them in muriatic acid. They come out looking brand spanking new. We take those guys, we put them right back into the tank, and they look amazing for about 3 days. And even though all the other trays in that tank might look a little, little dirtier, they've got some coralline growing on it, whatever, that super ultra clean tray will start to grow hair algae, because all that stuff that looks kind of cruddy to you, is going to fend off the really problematic algae and things like that. So, long story short on that, you just have to kind of encourage the microfauna and just encourage a lot of herbivores. Snails do a really good job. Tangs, foxfaces, that sort of thing. Algae blennies. Matt, what do you grow your zoas out on? We are pretty much growing zoas just on ceramic discs and plates and stuff like that. Nothing too exciting. Fan, have you noticed Aussie torches are harder to keep versus Indo, or just an idiot over here? No, I mean, I think that torches in general tend to be a little bit sensitive. I don't really, I mean, there might be like a subtle difference between Aussie versus Indo, but Euphilia like that tend to be kind of a risk of just like crashing one day. And I'm not really exactly sure what the case is there, whether it's a lack of one type of nutrient or something. Right now, we don't do enough analysis here anyway to really have like a good idea of something, of some trace element missing or some kind of food source missing or something, but they tend just to get like some kind of disease and they just crash. And that might be from propagation activity, not really sure. Let's see. Let's see. The ball anemones are less than a centimeter, clear with white ball tips. Yeah, they're fine. I mean, like I said, like those types of anemones, chances are they're not going to really survive in your tank. At least they don't survive in ours, and we try to keep them alive. Any reason, so this is Skill Master, any reason why cristata gold torches are hard to find? Let me do a quick little Google search. I think they're available. I mean, to me that just looks like an Australian gold torch. Likely, the reason why you might not be seeing a whole bunch is they are probably, even at the wholesale level, shockingly expensive, and there's no guarantee that they're going to survive in your care, meaning the retailer's care. So if I just made up a price that's in the hundreds of dollars, that means that the retailer has to sell it for multiples of hundreds of dollars and also take that risk. I have a feeling that these kites, just based on what I'm seeing on Google Images, that is just a risk. Now, I'm sure somebody out there will take that risk, but right now, I'm going to go ahead and guess that, like at the wholesale level, they're just shockingly expensive, and we just don't want to have anything to do with that. Or I should say, your favorite retailer wants nothing to do with that. They're probably available. Andrew K. Apologies if this has been asked. How did you graft the Montipore Digi? I didn't, and maybe nobody did. A lot of what comes in as like a grafted such and such isn't so much that it's grafted, like by us. It's that what can happen in coral spawning is that two eggs can fuse, like two fertilized eggs can fuse, and if you want to see it actually happening, check out there's like this guy that did research on acropora named Jamie Craggs in the UK, and his talk on acropora, like the sexual reproduction of acropora that he was able to accomplish like in his lab, like he shows like two like two like fully fertilized eggs land right next to each other, fuse, and then you get this acro that has like like this ice cream swirl of color. That sort of thing, I think, is like where you're getting a lot of like this quote unquote hybridization from. So in the case of like the Montes that we have that are quote unquote hybridized, they just show up that way. Now, having said that, we just showed a Paleothoa, and we have hybridized those things. So we had a purple death and a nuclear green, and when you just kind of like grow them next to each other, occasionally you'll start to get some that are half and half, or some fraction. Gabriel, happy Easter weekend. You too. You too. I think on the rest of the website, we're also having an Easter sale, so be sure to check that out too, you guys. KB, does the sky blue hydnophora branch at all, or is it just encrusting? So far, ours is mainly encrusting, but in the past, we used to have one that did do quite a bit of branching. Not sure how ours are going to go, because ours are a little strange. Ours, speaking of hybridization, are both green and blue right now. It's kind of neat. Let's see. What advice or guides on dosing trace? I'm thinking about starting, but don't know whether to approach it with tropic marine or fauna marine trace. Okay. So my general advice for any kind of additive like that is to make sure that you're actually doing the testing, whether that be benchtop testing with like Stylophora test kits, or sending your samples in to ICP or something, because you don't really want to just blindly dose this stuff. Now, I'm a little tiny bit of a hypocrite there, because we're dosing a product called aquavitral fuel right now. And it's mainly to provide amino acids for acropora, but it also contains trace elements. And we're not really measuring anything with regard to that. We do send out the occasional ICP test, but it's not so regular that we're going to be making any decisions based on what we see, in regards to like the trace stuff. So yeah, I think that either one of those products are probably going to be fine, but I would at least start off with some understanding of like where your trace elements currently are, because chances are just doing water changes is probably going to be good enough. And I would really hesitate to just overdo it when it comes to adding stuff, because there definitely is such a thing as like too much of a good thing. Even when we were trying to do amino acids, we did like a DIY amino acid thing, and we just kind of eyeballed it to a large degree, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? It turns out that the worst thing that can happen is your acros die. So, and then once we looked at, how much were we supposed to put in? It was like the tiniest little itty bitty sprinkle of the idea of a pinch was how much that was supposed to go in. Yeah, we screwed that up. So again, don't overdo it. Know where you're starting, know where you want to be, that type of thing. Reef RC. I've noticed that you like to keep foxface as an algae grazer within most, if not all, of your tanks. Do you recommend I keep one in an SPS dominated with some LPS corals? Sure. Yeah. Where you might run into issues with them is if you have like a lot of LPS, sometimes they get a taste for things like micromusa and things like favia. Favia, have you seen my last video? Those types of like fleshy brain corals, they can sometimes get nibbly on. Your mileage may vary. They're less likely to mess with SPS, and they are one of the best algae grazers. They really chomp down on macroalgae. So specifically, they're very good at controlling Valonia. Having said that, a lot of people these days are using Marco Rock, and Marco Rock is very cavernous, and sometimes these little caverns are just out of the reach of a big foxface. So you'll get Valonia growing in the crevices of Marco Rock. So it's not perfect, but at the same time, also, once acros and stuff like that get really, really, really growing, they'll create nooks and crannies underneath them. And you might get like Valonia growing underneath them. So I guess the benefit of having something like a foxface is they're going to take care of the problematic algae that they can reach out in the open, and that's really within your line of sight. So aesthetically, it's going to look nicer. Courtney, how goes the Nudibranch project? We are growing, for those that are kind of don't know what the heck we're talking about. We are growing a couple of tanks full of aiptasia in order to breed some aiptasia-eating nudibranchs. And just yesterday, we checked, and in the tank that we're trying to grow the nudibranchs, we saw 2 absolutely massive ones and a whole bunch of eggs. So real soon here, I'm expecting to get a nice little brood stock of them growing. Yeah, I would say it's going really well. The ones that we got there, like I said, the 2 big ones are as big as I've ever seen. They're almost an inch long. They're so cool. Migs, hey Than, what is your ideal height for the aluminum profile stands? Interesting question. Any advice on a work versus display tank? Sure. Okay. So it took us a little while to figure out like the ideal tank height. And a lot of that does depend on work versus display. For display, I think I'd like to have the tank kind of start at my waist level and go up to like my chin. Now that is like a huge, deep aquarium. It is going to be an absolute horror show to try to service. So again, grain of salt, but a 36-inch deep tank is like stunning for a display. You're gonna hate life dealing with it, but the sacrifices we make for aesthetics, right? Now, for working on the tank, I want to get it as low as possible while still being able to plumb stuff underneath. And I think that what we ended up with was a stand that was about 22 inches tall, so maybe like mid-thigh for me. And as far as like the top of the aquarium, we're coming up just like a little bit below, like maybe sternum level, like you can't see, but like halfway down my thigh, right? Because I tend to be taller and I want to be able to get my arm in there. And so like armpit height would be the absolute top for me for a work tank. But I'm also, again, the tallest person here. So ideally, other folks that are shorter than me would be able to like just to get into these tanks at armpit level. That's kind of like ergonomically what works out best. Quonk, how big is that red glitter gunny that you purchased? It is tiny. When can we expect it to be made available? I have no idea. Right now, I'm just hoping to get it to survive and get it through quarantine. I would love to have it one day. Yep, it's pretty nice. I like it more than that Amazeballs gunny. That might be fighting words, but yeah, I mean, it's like those are two super high-end ones. Like the Amazeballs gunny is insanely nice. But yeah, the red glitters, I've been looking for one for a really long time. So when one showed up for sale, I'm like, I've been looking for like 2-3 years, and it finally shows up, and I'm not going to bulk on price now, so I just ended up buying it. I might not ever even make my money back on it. I don't really care. It's part of the collection. I get to have some fun too, occasionally, right? Matt, do you base coral prices on how much time effort for you to grow or base it off of competitors? Seems like growth rate might not be reflected in pricing. Um, I don't know. I think that every little bit plays into pricing. Little known secret. I haven't priced anything in like 5 years. So I don't know what the thought process is. I give the staff a lot of autonomy about these things. There's certain corals that are a lot less expensive, and I think that's based on pretty much we are starting to value the space that they take up more than we're valuing like a market value on the coral itself. So certain things are really, really cheap. Certain things are going to be so expensive here that you might find a better deal somewhere else, but you'll definitely never get a discount on that particular thing here. For example, like we just talked about with like an amazeballs goni, we have so few of those. I can't imagine us selling that for less than $600 ever. I mean, yeah, I just can't imagine. So, yeah, like certain things like that are always going to be like super pricey. So it just kind of depends, I would say. Let's see. Yuri Gaming, how do you avoid RTN? I don't know if we do avoid it. It kind of depends on the system. Right now, I would say that the acros that are in our new farming setup, they've done like super well and really haven't had those types of issues. But occasionally out in the greenhouse, there's a lot of fluctuations and perhaps that lends like them to have more of a risk of that. But it doesn't happen occasionally. Generally speaking, what we like to try to do is to keep them very happy with regard to feeding, with flow and light. I mean, that's like the most cookie cutter answer ever. Like really stable chemistry, a lot of flow, a lot of light, and we feed the heck out of them with amino acids. Paul Mansell, do you ship to Ukraine? No, US only. How often do you guys have to clean the haze off your glass? Daily, every other day, never? If you see our glass clean, it was likely cleaned that day. There's always stuff that likes to haze up glass. So, I mean, how often do we have to do it? 3 days a week, maybe? Tech HR. Any advice on keeping gonis happy long term in a mixed reef tank? It should surprise nobody, but I think that feeding plays the biggest role in that. We feed pretty heavily a bunch of different things to gonis specifically. We shut off the flow. We dump all different types of powdered product on them. We For the bigger gonis, we feed like different types of frozen food. For example, we've got like a little mix of krill, mysis, and lately we've been a lot better about using like the fatty acid supplement called Celcon. That's been like an industry staple for 30 years, seemingly. We've been going more with that because we were getting some copper band butterflies, kind of like through that quarantine period where they develop I forget I don't even know how to pronounce it. Lymphocystis is basically like these little white things that show up on their fins and on their body. It's like a viral infection, and eventually all that stuff drops off and their fins clear up. So the important thing is like during that time period, just to make sure that they're eating. And so we try to find aiptasia for them just to hunt down. So if we see any trays that might have aiptasia, we bring that over. We sometimes we even grow some fast growing feather dusters because they really like feather duster worms. We bring those over, and then we try to get them eating frozen mysis. And when you enrich the frozen mysis in that Celcon, that gives them like a really good chance of surviving. We also take that same frozen mix with the salcon and we try to feed some of these corals. So going back to the Goni thing, really for us, I think the biggest deal is to keep them well fed. Let's see. What are the crazy high numbers on the upper left below your logo? So that is a measure of color temperature. So if you can imagine a star burning at 10,000 Kelvin, what color would it be, sort of thing. So that's kind of the color measurement. So as that number goes up, you'll see that the image of the coral gets more blue and you'll see more fluorescence. So it starts off at daylight, and over the course of 20 some odd seconds, it will get more and more and more progressively blue. And the reason why we do that is to give people a rough idea what corals will look like under different types of lighting. Tattooed dancer. I just got 3 Stylophora pistillatas. Bright as can be. Any anecdotes? Stylophora. Let's see. I'm gonna copy this into the Google Images just so we know we're talking about the same thing. Let's see. Okay. Nothing too much in the way of like an anecdote. I like those because like we have like the pink varieties here, and in the summertime they do this really cool thing where they just get this really, really bright, intense pink. So bright, in fact, that they practically look like they're glowing when there's no lights on. Like just in broad sunlight, like even taking them out of the water, they're still super, super pink. I don't think they fluoresce at all, though. So it's one of those corals that are great for like a bright daylight aquarium. And I'm also seeing like some pictures of like one that's like pink with green tips, and that is really neat. I need to again, I'm in that coral acquisition mode, right? It's like I would like to get some of that. Alex Thompson is asking, does your ruby red xenia pulse? No, it does not. So we have, it's kind of like a tricky, it's a tricky shopping thing, right? So we have a Red Sea xenia, which is a Red Sea pulsing xenia. I think the only thing about that makes any sense is pulsing and xenia, because it's not from the Red Sea, I don't think, and it's not red. So those pulse. Then we have a red xenia, which actually has like this reddish brown coloration, and that one does not pulse. Sammy D. Than, I'm reopening a small reef shop in Toledo. I'd like to feature your frags from time to time, wholesale to LFS, or do you think this idea would only push my walk into your website? So usually, here's the problem with us and wholesale, two other vendors. In the past, you kind of had to choose. You either like sold retail or you sold wholesale. Now, a lot of times now that line is blurring to some degree, but what it boils down to for us is that for somebody to get a volume discount for us, they would have to buy in such volume to actually make it make sense that most often a typical sized store wouldn't be able to meet that volume, because the difference between, or I should say that there's a huge overlap between a very good retail customer and a typical wholesale customer. So at that point, it's like very much still we have to pick sides, and we just choose to be retail only. Now, that is not to say that if a very large distributor wants to come in and literally buy like, mid four figures in coral, they'll get a volume discount, especially if the type of stuff that they're buying is a lot of our excess. So if we have like a huge excess of a particular coral, like a puppy-sized, plating Monty that is taking up the space that could have been hundreds of frags of acros instead of one giant plating Monty that we can't even ship. We're gonna let that thing go for a song, just to free up the space. But there's only so many people that are even able to take such a thing. I mean, I don't know how big your tank is for your home aquariums, right? But if that thing is 30 inches across, that doesn't even fit into most people's aquariums front to back. So in those cases, a sale to a distributor, like a big purchaser, might make some sense. But generally speaking, like if somebody just has like a tank maintenance business or a small store, the numbers just aren't going to work out volume wise. But then again, I was just thinking, but a lot of stores buy retail from us sometimes just to get something. Migs, are you basically hands off on Becca's tank? Seems really different from something you do, i.e. clownfish. Me personally, I'm hands off on all my tanks. No, she does a lot of that work. We make her do all that. So she cleans the glass, she does the water changes, she plants all the corals. I think she does. I mean, the most I do is I walk by and I throw food in, and on the weekends, because I'm the only one usually here on the weekend, I'll top off the tank because I don't want it to just be like blowing air bubbles. But no, pretty much, she does all the chemical testing, all that stuff. So yeah, we definitely. I mean, where we do the most work is on like the equipment side of things, like if she needs some help doing that. But even then, like recently, she did like all the wire management herself. But when it came to like just doing like the plumbing stuff, we helped out a lot with that, hanging the lights, that sort of thing. But so if you're asking like how much work does she do versus how much work I do, that's 1,000 to 1. I don't do nothing. Okay, Matt Wilkie, do you ever see a time when you will take down the greenhouse and build another building? So I was thinking about it because we get asked that question a lot, right? And I think for sentimental value alone, I will never take down the greenhouse. Like, I could see it be more likely that I'll somehow find a way to spend $1 million to make that greenhouse nicer than to ever take it down. Because if you think about it, that greenhouse, for the longest time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. That's how you end up spending like 14, 15 years in college and ending up with like 3 degrees, right? You don't really know what you want to do, and I didn't. Now, finally, when that greenhouse started to like work for itself, started to like pave a way that I could do this as like a real business that makes money, that like completely changed my life. And it's not even close. Like, I worked the kind of like the fancy Tidal corporate office job routine, and considering how much happier I am now versus back then, I owe a lot to that greenhouse. Again, for sentimental reasons alone. So even if it never grows coral in the future, that greenhouse is and I mean so technologically advanced right now. I can do anything I want in there. So I would just keep it around. I would build another building someplace else entirely, but I would probably never take it down. They can bury me in that thing. So quick answer, I guess, would be probably not, probably never. Let's see. Okay. Definitely respect to pick one side or the other. It's the only way the LFS can survive. One of my wholesalers is doing retail on weekends. They will be cut out of the supply chain. Honestly, I bet most like wholesalers these days are basically retail with just more volume. I mean, it's such a weird market because the wholesalers, if you really like get to know them and talk to them, they don't consider other big wholesalers their competition at all. They consider like the weekend home hobbyist, uh, like home growers, as a much bigger market threat to them. So again, I think that the pick a side thing is an antiquated philosophy. For us, it's something that we can stick to for the simple fact of just like straight economics. Like it just doesn't make sense for us to to do it. Like the money's just not right. But for other people, it's more ideological. And like I said, I think a lot of traditional wholesalers have a very retail approach these days. Yeah, tattooed dancer. So yeah, it is her tank. She needs to learn, so it makes sense. And the funny thing is like, so she's been working here for a little, like almost 2 years or something like that. I lose track of time so much these days, but so she's definitely going through her like her journey as a kind of a kind of a new hobbyist, even in like a professional setting. Like this is a very much an office tank thing for her, right? Uh, but she knows so much about corals. Like the she shoots all of the like all the videography that you're seeing like behind me. She shoots all of that. She's shot that for years now. She's shot all of our sales online. She has shot all of our like what you see is what you get now for years. She has seen to excruciating detail more coral than 99.99999% of everybody in this hobby or industry. Yet, she has like this very, beginner experience still after all that. So I kind of like, because I think personally would probably not say that she's in the hobby because this is clearly a part of her job here, right? At the same time, she is like more qualified to talk about this than a lot of people in the industry, or I wouldn't say like in the industry necessarily, but just like that are like avid hobbyists. She's seen a lot of stuff here. I mean, so and this is where like she gets spoiled because if you've seen like our building overview and stuff, like we go crazy on tech, right? And so occasionally I will take her around to like other places just so she can see what it's like. And she kind of gets this like, I didn't know that's like that nobody else does this. I'm like, yeah, nobody else does this. We are the crazy people. So yeah, so now I think that she, after seeing like more of other people's stuff, gets a better appreciation of like what's around here because the type of stuff that we have nobody else has. Yeah. Yeah. So what's really crazy, now that I just think of it, is that she technically has an aquarium that she can call her own. I don't. I mean, you can say that, oh, well, like all of Tidal Gardens is mine, right? But there's no one single tank here that I would ever consider like mine in any way, shape, or form. I think that like there's my staff might have more more like emotional investment in some of these aquariums than I do. Like for example, our SPS tank, one of our guys, Luke, he is a big SPS head, and that's kind of like his like pride and joy. I mean, he was the one that that hand planted like 90% of those corals in there. Like he really dotes on all the SPS. He's the one that like is super fastidious about doing water chemistry tests because he is like laser focused on acroporas and coloration. So yeah, it's really kind of interesting because I tend to just not have that level of of just buy-in, I guess. Beautiful work. Love the light meter on the top left. This is awesome to see. Thank you. Yeah, it now the way that we do that, it is a special effect. So that's it's so meaning that it's not practical. We are not literally changing the light, but when we do this edit, it gives you like a pretty good idea. Like I've gotten better at it over the years, so it does give like an idea of what something might look like, in the different types of lighting because, the lighting has such a huge deal to play in how the corals look aesthetically. So sometimes, a lot of times, when people are, they're saying like, this doesn't look like such and such picture that I saw online. I mean, there is like some degree of photo editing that might make it look crazy, but at the same time, I would say that the difference in lighting systems could have a much more profound impact than even like image editing being overly aggressive. If you don't have the lighting system for this, it's going to look bad. Simply put, especially the stuff that relies on hyperfluorescence. There's certain corals that you will only ever see photographed in blue light. Case in point, like some of the higher end acroporas, those acropora tenuises, things like that. They only look good in super blue, super actinic looking tanks. And the more fleshed out that actinic spectrum is, the better those corals might look. If you have a tinge of daylight, those corals, simply put, are not going to look good. They're going to look like some $500 brown frag in many cases. The transition from the old style to hers was immaculate. We really couldn't tell. Kudos to her for consistency. Yeah, no, she's. I would say that she identifies more as being a photographer than as a videographer. Uh, so yeah, she really likes the photography end, and I think she puts up with the videography end. I personally like the videography a lot more than I like photography, but who knows? I used to be a very good photographer many years ago. I mean, so like the progression of it for years now, she's been the primary photographer, and for years before that, Ben, um, he's been like the photographer, and so you have to go back like a good long while since I was the main photographer here. Jordan, would you consider making some smaller coral print hand towels for merch? My lady does not appreciate when I use regular bathroom towels for reef stuff. Okay, maybe. So we go through like a third party logistics thing called Teespring that's integrated into YouTube, and sometimes they have a launch of new products. And I know that they make like a big like a beach towel, but they might have smaller towels as well. We have to check again. So, schwa. If you're doing it with raw camera data, it should be close enough to get the good idea. Okay, so that's funny that you mentioned that. So, um, my camera, this video camera, can shoot raw. I have never once shot raw with it because once you start talking about file sizes with raw video at the cinema level, um, the file sizes get so unbelievably large and unmanageable that I can't work with it. You affect, you know how like Apple will make a workstation that could be 100 grand, and people like when they see like the Apple conference, they're like, who the heck is this thing for? Nobody's gonna spend 100 grand for an Apple computer. The hardcore cinema people actually need that computer to store and work on that footage, because it'll be like literal like hundreds of terabytes of data coming out of these cameras that you then have to like run through a machine, and hopefully that machine doesn't catch on fire. Like it's so taxing. Yeah, so it is funny because like with photography, yeah, raw photos, sure, no problem. In videography land, raw video, nobody deals with that. That doesn't have to. Like, okay, if you're shooting Mad Max and you need to like change the entire color from like this crazy hyper-saturated daytime to day to night sort of thing, where you're shooting during the day but you needed to make it look like it's midnight under moonlight, okay, now you need to shoot some stuff in raw to do that kind of color grade. But everybody else, nah. That's a total, video photography tangent. Lisa, I've always been impressed that my corals from you look exactly the same in person. Thank you so much. That's very good to hear, because when I hear the opposite, I get thrown into a slight rage. Let's see, Tech HR, with all the corals you have going in and out, do you quarantine all the corals separately, or how does that work for an operation the size of Tidal Gardens? So we quarantine stuff that we plan to propagate long-term in this new building. If it's stuff that we bring in and flip, something like a trachea, something like a scoli, like a homophilia australis, homophilia bowerbank, well, even bowerbankies, we're trying to farm those now. But stuff that we have no intention of propagating, those get a dip, those get put into our mature systems out in the greenhouse, and any pests that kind of get through the dipping process, because dips are limited, guys. There's no magic bullet for this. That stuff gets managed by a number of like fish and inverts in those systems. So, does the occasional thing get out? Probably, but a lot better than before. I'll tell you that. So it's kind of funny that now that most, even at the wholesale level, they're taking aquaculture and farming a little bit more seriously. There was a time where nobody at the wholesale level would even dip corals, not even dip them, because this stuff would just like sell that fast. So they would put all of that activity onto the retailers, right? But now that they themselves are trying to get into like coral growing, like the first few years of it was like really bad for them. It was just like, oh, we got all these like fresh corals just from the ocean, let's cut them all up, and literally in a week they would all be dead from like pests eating all the corals. It's like, oh, huh, that's weird. Yeah. So now they're a lot better at it, and like the few that we deal with, they actually have some very good processes in place. Are they perfect? Hell no. Stuff gets through all the time. That's why we do our dipping stuff too. But yeah, like the best way that we found to manage that stuff, try to stem as much as we can on the incoming, but then have like active predation of the stuff that we're actually worried about. And then the stuff that we really want to do long term, we put that through like the full 72-day fun stuff. And is that perfect? No. Some pests are really good at being pests. Gabe 3EB. Once or twice a year, I head through Ohio. Any chance you will open up to walk-ins in the next year or two again? Maybe. So there's a couple of factors that are kind of sabotaging the whole will you open back up thing. And it's not all just COVID. COVID is probably like fifth on the list at this point. Everybody here is either triple or quadruple vaccinated. We're all hermits. Like we don't go out a ton. And even when we do, it's like most of us wear masks and stuff in public. So the likelihood of like, a COVID scare here, very unlikely. So like I said, that's probably like fifth on the list. The sort of stuff that is much more of a risk is that this place at any given time is like a tripping hazard. It's still very much a construction zone, especially since we are working on this new set of aquariums. So that is probably one on the list, and 1B on the list would be we need to staff better to accept appointments. Because right now, I can't have myself or the two guys that know pricing best to do it. They are so busy with everything else that they can't take the time to spend a day, handling appointments. That is not happening. So once staffing levels change, once we get done with our more major construction projects to the point where we are not like a slip and fall away from going out of business, that sort of thing. Because there's stuff that's like straight up treacherous here. No, we need to like build platforms to go over, like exposed plumbing and stuff. So no thanks, not right now. Mike Downey, is there a way to buy multiple items that only pay the shipping once? Yes. You select adding to an existing order as your shipping option. And once we are starting to prepare orders, we will grab up all of the orders that you place. Make sure that you've paid shipping, or if you've gone over $250, that we refund all the shipping that you've paid. And then we'll go from there. But yes, so that is the way to avoid the multiple instances of shipping. You select adding to an existing order. Skillmaster, would you ever consider venturing into coral breeding? I think it's really interesting, and it's something that I've been considering since 2019. I actually went to the UK in part to meet with Jamie Craggs, who is a pioneer in that space. And I got to talking with him, and right now, at the commercial level, I don't think it's there at all. Like the stuff that I'm interested in breeding are like Blastomussa, Micromussa lords, Homophilia australis, like Homophilia bowerbanki, like these super slow growing type things, and getting crazy colors. But the folks that are doing that activity, they're posting pictures of like, yes, after 3 years, we have a scoli that's this big. I'm thinking, that ain't it. That's not it. That is not going to get me making the space time investment to do this. So until more is kind of like done at the research stage, I'm not really seeing it for us. Acros, maybe that might be a thing, but yeah, like I think the difficulty of setting something up, combined with the time that it would take to get something to a sellable size, those are some serious obstacles. But am I interested? Absolutely, definitely. We could probably even, go through the process of setting up a black room for it, even. But we'll see. No plans for it immediately. Sammy, I can't wait to see Than get them Neptune skies up and swapping his old lights out for more skies. So right now I don't have any experience with them. The only time that I've ever actually seen them was at a trade show. And the thing I did like about it was how it looked like on camera. It was a very nice not harsh look. Like, so the vast majority of our space here is Ecotech Radion, and a lot of of the bigger coral farms use Ecotech Radions for a reason. They grow coral really well. They color up coral really well. Ecotech is a really good company to work with. So, when it comes to like other lighting, I am always curious to dabble. So, for example, we got a lot of Orphic lights. We've messed with ATI lights, things like that. So we dabble, right? But I would say that like the meat and potatoes light, which is hilarious to say given like the price positioning of their product, but our meat and potatoes is Ecotech Radion. But we had a conversation with one of the folks at Neptune, and he's like, I think maybe I misunderstood, but it sounded like he's going to get us 2 demo units of those skies, and I thought it would be a really good fit over Becca's tank, because that tank is primarily intended for video work, and I think ideally it should have had 3 radions from the beginning, but it only had 2 radions. And so there's a couple of corals that looked like they weren't getting enough light exposure, especially after we put some egg crate over top of that tank, which probably wasn't a great idea. So I think that with like a broader coverage in a 2 light solution with those, yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Also, like down the road, we might try some of those Phillips Coral Cares. There's a one standout feature of a Phillips Coral Care that appeals to me, and that is that it doesn't have an exhaust fan like every other type of light does. And where that might really come to shine, play on words there, sorry, is in the greenhouse. Because in the greenhouse, it's a gross environment. It's really harsh on a lot of electronics and stuff. And so where a lot of lights tend to struggle is the buildup of dirt and grime as a result of humidity and just dust in the air on the fans of these lighting systems. So if the thing just doesn't have a fan at all, that's one less thing to worry about. And those lights are a completely sealed unit. And I guess it's like IP65 rated or something like that. I just made that up. I don't know. But I heard that it's very splash resistant, which in that greenhouse is kind of nice because on a bad day, it basically rains from condensation in that place. So that's obviously not the most wondrous environment for electronics. But like I said, I'm curious to see how different lights survive out there. We even got like the cheap black box lights from Amazon out there. It's like, I'm just curious, how long are these going to survive? So those are the Vipar Spectras. It's like, so far seems like a good light. We'll see if they get rusted out and explode. The greenhouse will tell all. It's what's that quote from Dune? It's like Arrakis tests the faithful or something like that. I'm gonna look that up. What is that quote? If you haven't seen the Dune movie, yeah, if you haven't seen the Dune movie, it's like, I highly recommend. Okay, the quote is, God created Arrakis to test the faithful. All right. Yeah, that's the greenhouse. It is the ultimate crucible for the durability of your electronics. Okay, Anton, I remember a few days ago you talked about a Marilina that grew into an onion shape. Do you still have it? I have I probably have a dozen of them. They all grew into that shape. It's nothing to really talk about. It's like a little brownish green guy, and it's a Marilina, I think. Marilina adjacent. Okay. What number are are we on? We're on number 158. So, just out of curiosity, guys, I am curious, just based on the group of folks that are here, are you guys more into like an SPS dominated thing, or more towards like an LPS softy thing? So I realize that there's probably people with both, but I would say that, let's say if there's 60% of your tank is SPS, you're an SPS guy, okay? Just for the sake of like clarification there. So if you guys are SPS heads, type 1 in chat. And if you guys are more into like the LPS and softy side, type a 2 in chat. I'm kind of curious just to get like a quick little straw poll going. And I want to check one other thing while you guys vote. So nobody sit on your hands. I want to actually see some numbers. Okay, interesting. Seeing more 2s than I thought. That's a little surprising. Not super surprising, but yeah. That is interesting because it tends to be a lot more of a point of focus on the selling side, on the businessy end, where people tend to focus a lot more on SPS. And on most people's sites for sale, there's a lot more SPS, and perhaps it's because they're easier to propagate than the LPS and softies. But yeah, that is kind of interesting. Mostly mixed. Yeah, and I get that. I think that there's very few like SPS only. There's very few like LPS and soft only. I actually like extra respect for the folks that just do all softy all the time here, because like a lot of people these days really aren't so much into like an all leathers and mushroom type corals. Weird. Sorry, I'm just like looking at something in the background here. Anyway. Let's see. Catching up on chat real quick. Yeah, also, like extra credit for the folks that are doing Gorgonians. There's not a lot of people that do like a lot of the species specific stuff. I tend to see a lot of people kind of like go to the same like grab bag of corals, and so there's like a lot of sameness in aquariums, where I think this is where I think the freshwater side of things kind of excels. They will hard commit onto like one kind of fish and like one kind of wood, and that's it, you know. There's not a whole lot of overlap. They go for like these very hard line categorical themes for their aquariums, and that's just where they stick. Whereas I think that on the reefing side especially, we don't have like the luxury of having like 10 different tanks. You have like one tank and all of your favorite stuff gets piled in there. So I think that you get kind of like this a more of like a homogenized look with all your corals. But I think that as the hobby kind of like advances through time, I think, and at least I hope, that more people will do these like very specific looking systems. We're starting to do that a little bit here, but even us, we don't have a ton of different show tanks. So right now we have like this SPS very acro dominated tank. We have what used to be like a Euphilia tank until we found out that only torches are Euphilia, And so it's like a euphilia slash fimbriophilia tank. And since we've already broken that seal where it's really not a euphilia tank anymore, should we go through the process of quarantining some big elegances and just putting that towards the bottom of the tank just for funsies? We might, and just make that a big flowy tank. One of our other tanks we were planning on using for to make like a goniopora garden, except for the fact that all the gonies that we put into that system didn't like it, and we put in like a Colorado sunburst anemone and it loved it, and so that might slowly transition to just an all anemone tank. And then our really big 600-gallon show tank, which is it's a 600-gallon peninsula show tank. I was thinking about doing a more LPS dominated reef tank, mixed but more LPS, and that tank so far has just been cursed. Like, it got a sick fish, and so we couldn't catch the fish in a 600-gallon tank, so we decided to shut that tank off from the rest of the tanks and treat it with a number of fish medications. And so now finally the fish are healthy. We've reattached it to the rest of the system, and we're finally at the point where we might start putting in some LPS in there. It took a while, but we're finally getting there. So that might be more of a hodgepodge tank, but I thought that one would have been cool to do something with like Gorgonians or something like that. But all the Gorgonians that we have are Atlantic. All the fish that are there are Pacific, so it's a weird mix, so we're probably not going to be doing that. Okay. Peter T. Speaking of softies, Than, do you propagate any yellow Fiji leathers? Yes. I've been seeing Tonga and Australian varieties show up. Yes, we have that bright canary yellow Fiji leather, and we have been propagating it. We don't offer them for sale a lot because they do take a little bit longer than people think, but we do have them. Actually, one thing that we have, which we probably won't do here in the new building, but we have tons, and I mean tons of giant toadstool leathers, and I think it'd be cool just to have a tank that's just full of them. That'd be a neat look. I would like to redo all the tanks in the greenhouse, to be perfectly honest. Like, a lot of that greenhouse is 20 years old, and we found better ways to do many, many things. So that is certainly, like, and I'm talking like way down the road when I just have nothing better to do with my time or attention, is to redo a lot of the systems out there, because I could do it so much better. It could be so much more elegant, so much easier to work out there, cleaner, more organized, all that stuff. But right now we've built out the infrastructure in such a way that we can do a lot of cool stuff, but it would involve breaking down all those systems, and when we do that, like, where are all these corals going to go? It's a big old headache. But I would love to be able to do it, because currently, like, the systems that are there, it's just room for improvement. TFK, what is your favorite chalice? My favorite chalice is like the rainbow dynamite varieties. We have a few here. I love them. It's like that quintessential rainbow melted crayon looking chalice. It's the best one we've ever had. Do acros take a while to show their polyps? Blue bottom specifically talking about. I just started with SPS. Generally, no. What I found that really helps with polyp extension is to feed them amino acids. Use the product of your choice. Because I know that people have had success with a lot of different products. Some people like the Brightwell stuff. Some people like the Red Sea stuff. Right now we're using the Seachem stuff called Aquavitra Fuel, and so far, like, really, really good success with that. We turn off the return pump so that it doesn't go down into the sump to get protein skimmed. Yeah, it's amazing. The protein skimmer is really good at removing amino acids. Go figure. So we remove it from filtration for about a half hour, but we leave the circulation pumps on, and it allows the amino acid mix to blow around in the tank. And we probably do that every other day, give or take, maybe even every day. But we just constantly are feeding aminos. And our polyp extension on our acros, I'll fight anybody on that. They are crazy big right now. Our reef RC, I'm curious. Olophilia, how are they different from Space Invader Pectinia, from care requirements? They're not different. I treat them exactly the same. In fact, we have a tank where both of them are fairly close to one another. Than, I'm upgrading my tank from 30 to 120 this week. Would you move everything straight away to the new tank and just add new sand and water, or would you cycle the new tank? And keeping the other running. You might want, if you have the ability, you could cycle the new tank, right? That's like the safer bet. It's just to allow some fauna to grow in there. It depends on who you ask, really. If you're asking me, that's probably how I would approach it. Like Jake Adams would probably just take every single coral in your old tank and put it into the new tank and then cycle your new tank with coral. There might be something to that because, again, it's really all about like developing that microfauna, and like corals are part of that. And in that really fast introduction of a very diverse species set into the new tank, it'll probably go pretty well. Just don't go crazy with a lot of very aggressive feeding in a new aquarium. But yeah, seeding a new tank in that way will jumpstart it pretty nicely, I would think. Mike Downey. I can't keep elegances alive. It's the only coral that I have problems with. Usually put them in mid-height, medium flow, high-ish nutrients. Yeah, I don't know, Mike. That sounds like to me it might be a sourcing issue, because they tend to be, for us, one of the most bulletproof corals. We tend to stay in the Australian side of things, though. We do nothing special for them, and they don't seem to really be susceptible to too much in the way of like illnesses or anything like that. Like the sort of pests that might be involved are like pretty easy to deal with and not really that fatal anyway. I think that maybe another possibility, aside from just sourcing, could be like how aggressively are you dipping them? Because certain ones I've noticed don't like a lot of different types of dip. Like they might stay closed or they might struggle for a really long time. So you kind of have to be careful of that. Tyler, Than, do you sell the Goldenrod and acropora? I do not. I just saw a picture of that fairly recently. That's going to be on the list of stuff to go get. I tend to like Anacropora. It's a very fast growing SPS. I have a feeling that it's very closely related to Montipora, because the Monty eating nudibranchs also eat Anacropora. That's how I know. There's probably some similarity there. But no, I saw the Goldenrod. It looks very cool. I would like to give it a try. One thing that that we are going to be starting to do is incorporating more ozone into our systems. Right now we have one big system that has ozone on it, and I'm really happy with what it's done for us aesthetically. And we haven't had it on there long enough to really kind of like make it any kind of distinction as to like, is it good, is it bad, is there something that's struggling or not. But from everything I can tell, both LPS and SPS have done well. All the fish have done well. Um, I think that the LPS that I'm seeing that might not be super crazy happy could have been a result of me slacking on feeding them, because when they were looking at their best, I was very diligent about feeding, and I've kind of slacked a bit. So they kind of shrunk down a little. And by shrunk down, I mean they're still giant compared to like what comes out of the ocean, but they're not giant compared to how big they used to be when I was very good about spot feeding them. So I think that once I get back into that, they might perk up, and it had nothing to do with ozone at all. I am kind of curious again to see how everything like looks long term, but so far so good. And we have an entire extra system to do like another setup with ozone. So I think that once we get that set up, all the tanks in this building are going to be like looking really, really crazy, because ozone is able to like impart this cleanliness to the water that looks almost fake. It looks like it almost looks like the water's rendered, for lack of a better word. It's so like sharp and sparkly, so I like it. Mike, Elegance coral might be too aggressive with the dip. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, there's certain dips that they just don't like. Is it possible to import to India? I'm afraid not. We only ship to the US. The other thing that I want to dabble with also is to see if we're able to get better color in our LPS. There's certain corals that have colored up really nicely on the SPS side. And typically LPS stay a lot more consistent color-wise, but I would like to see if there's a way to like juice them up a bit more. We've been trying a lot with different feeding, and that's affected their growth, but not so much their color. So I guess like there's certainly some room for experimentation there. Let me check something in the background real quick. Grease just left the room. See ya, Grease. Excuse me. Looks like liquid glass when ozone is used. It's really cool to see it when like you can just like look straight through it, and like that peninsula tank, for example, and it's like 4 feet of water on looking through the side of it, and you can look through at a person on the other side, and it's like as if there's no water there, and a fish will swim by, and it looks like that fish is just hovering in air. It's so neat. Clockwork Chaos, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. You know what? This is so weird. I've gotten 2 super chats today. It's been like months since I've gotten a super chat. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I thought that like super chat wasn't going to be a thing anymore. After vehemently debugging from the get-go that she would never put an acropora in her tank, how do you feel about Becca's recent bombshell? I thought that was kind of hilarious, because you know what it was? We were in Orlando. We were attending Aquashella down there. And we were going out to dinner at a Brazilian steakhouse, and on the way we decided to poke our head into Worldwide Corals, because it was literally like I don't know, maybe like 5 minutes away from where we were having dinner, and they were about to close. I mean, they had like half an hour left before they were going to close. We just popped our head in, and I wanted to show her like what another high-end store looked like, right? She wasn't able to see Top Shelf during that particular trip, unfortunately, so she couldn't see that, but she was able to see Worldwide. And I wanted to show her, and so she saw, one of their big tanks that was kind of like very acropora dominated, and she liked the look of what it looked like when it was like had big acropora colonies. And so she's like, I might have judged acropora too soon. But she's like, but I already told everybody it would never happen. And I'm like, it's your tank. You do what you want, You do what you want. So as of right this second, there is no acropora in her tank. But We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Do ozone bred corals acclimate well in normal tanks? I think so. I don't think that it would make too much of a difference. It's like if this particular tank was running activated carbon to clean up the water, how does that go? Like I started to stop worrying about other people's tanks, like because here's the reality of it. I need to try to do what I can to grow coral successfully over the long term. The reality of the situation is most people that are in this hobby as hobbyists are going to be gone in 24 months. There is a very large attrition rate and failure rate with the average hobbyist in here. I'm trying to do my best as far as education and stuff like that, but there's plenty of folks that do not have success in this hobby. So I can't tailor my tanks trying to hit the midpoint of what my potential customer might be. Like that's not going to go well for me. Like I need to do what I need to do over here to try to have like the longest sustainable best coral farm I can. And if that involves like doing like crazy high-end stuff that the average hobbyist doesn't do, that's just too bad. Our tanks are just going to be different. Speaking of Orlando, Barry, are you going to the show next weekend? I'll be roaming around it. I will be. So I have plans to attend Reefapalooza in Orlando. I will be there most of the time, I believe. So usually I try to hit up like Top Shelf, hit up Worldwide, but I went to both those places this last time. So this time I want to try to see about going to ACI to see Chris Meckley's place. That place is like more of a coral farm, and I need to actually get in touch with him again because he's going to be an exhibitor at the show. So I think that the only day that he's going to be available is like Monday, and I'm leaving Monday night. So I need to work on some logistics there. But I do hope to see his place. That's the one of the places that I haven't yet visited down in Orlando. It's always interesting to see other people's coral farms because everybody, and I mean everybody, does stuff differently. Everybody gets very different results. And so, people can talk all they want about their systems, but the corals and the systems themselves really do all the talking. Like there's so many I guess reef aquarium gurus. Guys, it's the aquariums. The aquariums do all the talking. It's less of a problem now because the internet is so prevalent. But and YouTube is like such a thing in this industry. But guys, there was a time, and there was like this message board. I guess they're still running. It's called Reef Central, and there were like dozens of these like experts, and they had huge egos and would just like bark at each other all the time and bark at anybody that did anything different, and would just basically say that your tank is gonna fail, all this stuff. And guys, they had huge followings. It's not just like, oh, it's just some this crazy person in the woods. No, they had huge disciples and followings and stuff like that, right? And never did they even so much as post a picture of their aquarium. Not once. Nowadays, I would hope that no, you need the receipts. I need to see the receipts before I give your perspective any weight whatsoever. Sorry, we live in that day and age now. It's like, I need to see the receipts 100% of the time. Like, that's cool that you think that you're successful at this hobby doing something, but all that jibber jabber, I want to hear the tank do the talking. Okay, that was an aside. Port Wolf, hi Than. Great stream the other day on Devin's channel. No clue who mentioned law school. Oh yeah. Yep, in a past life I did law school. Crazy to think now, but I used to be very comfortable with the idea of going to college. looking back at it now, it's like I would never want to attend another class ever again. Like the idea of just like stress before an exam, like no thanks. I would rather do literally anything else. Like I would rather mow my lawn than like worry about midterms. Speaking of mow the lawn, I finally got to mow my grass with my new Ventrac tractor. This is the sort of stuff I get excited about, like the most domestic stuff. I bought a new tractor to replace, it was basically to replace a small snow thrower and eventually my zero-turn John Deere mower. Because we did like a big driveway expansion to the point that in the snow I can no longer reliably clear it with a handheld, like a push behind, like a walk behind snow thrower. So I needed to get an actual tractor one. It's just too much to do at like 5 in the morning before my guys get here. So anyway, I have like this new tractor with this new mowing deck that's a flail mower. And that flail mower is designed for properties that don't get mowed more than once or twice a year, which is exactly the kind of neglect that I want to be able to handle on my property. Because they also make like super high-end like finished decks for like golf courses that are like $18,000 real mower decks, that can like contour with like the greens and stuff like that. That they get mowed every day. I'm not about that life. I'm like, when I mow my grass, when that stuff is a foot tall, 3 feet tall even, my mower can handle it. So I used it for the first time 2 days ago, and it is an absolute swamp here in Ohio. Like there's parts of my lawn, like 30-40% of it that you can't even stand in, and this mower was able to like not just roll through it, but just mow everything. I was able to mow my swamp. I loved it. It was so nice. So what's the word I'm looking for? The vocabulary just totally escapes me. So gratifying, I guess. It's a good experience. And the best thing about it was the fact that I'm going from a 54-inch riding lawnmower, zero turn, to a 72-inch flail mower deck. And that 54 versus 72 doesn't sound like a lot. Oh my gosh. It's a massive difference in how fast you cut big areas of grass. So less easy to steer, but that might just be, me not knowing what the hell I'm doing. And also it's a swamp. It's not kind of like a little unwieldy. But anyway, new tractor. That's what I get excited about. And I just saw that flicker on this item. I don't know what that is. That's like some little snafu on the export. Sorry about that. Computer does weird stuff. So sorry if the transitions are freaking out. Stogie122. I have a lobophilia that's receded, but still has flesh to it. Is it best to cut away the dead stony skeleton or allow it to continue to grow? Just leave it be. Your best advice, please. If it's just starting to recede, I would try to give it some kind of disinfectant dip. So something like iodine can help. Something like potassium salt could help. So like Reef Primer is an example of a potassium salt. Or if you want to try the DIY thing, you just get the potassium salt from like a regular big box store. I haven't tried it. I've only tried Reef Primer here. But there's some folks that really like just the stuff that you buy in a 40-pound bag. So hit them up for a recommendation there. I should probably say who it is. So that would be like Reef Bum, Keith. He was the one that told me about that. Barry, I'll keep an eye out for you then. Like ACI, Chris is a pioneer. So the thing I like about Chris is that he is very into coral husbandry. You don't see a lot of guys with that level of passion about it. Uh, Even amongst like the really good, stores and stuff like that, there are degrees of interest in the actual corals themselves. Like a lot of times, it is just business, and they're more interested in like the sales and stuff like that. For me, the stuff that I'm most excited about really is about systems and about scale up and about like how to leverage automation, things like that. Like I'm a very like systems and process guy. So it's refreshing to find folks that are really about coral health also. Not that I'm not about coral health. I mean, like I said, I kind of like polyp extension right, on these acros. But yeah, he is really all about that life. And so he does things that a lot of people don't do, and I'm very curious to see, like with my own eyes, the tanks do the real talking here, because if there's like crazy stuff that's happening, and again, I apologize for that thunderstorm effect that's going on. That's crazy. The computers, man. It's always interesting when you see some people doing it differently with a purpose and seeing the results. And here's the thing. One day I would like to be able to do the public thing again, but in the meantime, what I would really like is for a lot of more industry folks to come and visit here, because again, they need to see the tanks in person, right? Just to see what we're all about. So there's a few that have made it over here, like who's been over here? Ecotech has been over here. Ozotech, the Ozone people, have been over here. Neptune Systems has. There's a few others here and there. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry. That flicker is so annoying. Has that been going on like this whole stream? I'm just now kind of noticing it like later in the stream. Yeah. Yes, the internet flame wars of old. Yeah. Did you buy the Cartier tank Américain? I have not yet. You were thinking about it in the previous stream. So there's a few different Cartiers that I'm thinking of. The Tank America is like the most likely that I will get, but I also really like there is a Santos skeleton, but those are really expensive. They're like 20 G's, and I don't have 20 G's to blow on a watch right now, but I really like it. And actually, my absolute favorite Cartier is, I think, about 500 grand. And I will not be buying that as much as I like it. Let's see. Fan, just fence it in and get some goats. I would neglect goats. Like my cats look at me like I'm a tourist in my own house. Like I'm there so infrequently. Okay. Barry, your new systems are top-notch and well thought out. Thank you very much. We've tried to do a lot on the planning end of things. This latest thing, as far as this newest system, I'm going to be doing like a whole thing once it's more built out and everything, like go into like excruciating detail, because I'm very excited about that system. Yeah. It's probably a good thing that the stream is almost over, because it's like, that flicker, kind of annoying. Yeah, no, I just started a few minutes ago. Good. Good. Sorry about that, guys. You can blame Apple. Blame Apple. Make better software. Did you know there's 2 genera of candy canes now? I did hear that. And that doesn't really surprise me, because there's like, there's what I would call like the small ones and the big ones. Having said that, I know that we're able to grow the small ones pretty darn big. So I also wonder if it was just like a where are they found sort of situation, because there is like people don't know, but there's a huge difference between certain LPS that are grown in captivity versus ones that are geez, that flicker's getting worse, that are getting grown in captivity versus harvested from the wild. Like we just got a whole bunch of torches and stuff and a whole bunch of frog spawn from the wild, and this stuff's like sold per head and stuff. We got these things in, and I've never seen smaller frog spawn like that are supposed to be adult heads. I mean, they were the size of like a penny, fully extended. Like I didn't even know that they grew that small as adults, right? Because our full-grown frog spawn are the size of an iPhone, and here are these like penny-sized heads. And eventually, these penny-sized heads in our care, assuming that they don't just die from like brown jelly or something stupid, will also later on become iPhone-sized. It's just that way. So sometimes when I see like, oh, well, there's like there's like this mega version of this one coral versus like a smaller version of the same thing, sometimes I wonder, is it just the same thing, but there's just more nutrient in that area over there, therefore those things grow differently? I don't know. I've watched the videos of all the new toys getting installed. Yeah, like so the plumbers have been here for this past week straight, and this past week they've gotten a ton of cool stuff done. So I think that realistically there's only maybe 2 days left of plumbing on this system, and we're waiting for our sump to get fabricated, which hopefully is like like no watch today, but anytime now. I would love to get that sump in position, laser that up, line it up, whatever, to then so the plumbers can get back in and attach all that. Because once that's all attached, this thing is basically ready for water. Water meaning like RO leak test sort of thing, because I still need to purchase pretty much all the infrastructure for it, filtration wise, all that fun stuff. So all I can really do is get RO water up to 77 degrees. That's it. And flowing, right? We don't have any lights. We don't have a protein skimmer yet. None of that stuff. I'm curious about trying an MRC protein skimmer. If it is substantially quieter, I might eventually replace our other 2 skimmers that we currently have. We are likely again to go with radions over these tanks, 50 units of them. So I'm in some talks with them. Yeah, there might be some announcements later. This is the first year that I'm really considering doing like sponsorships of brands that we've used for years and years and years. But nothing is officially set in stone, so I'm not going to get the cart before the horse there. But we are in talks. Yeah, sorry you guys about the flickering. That's super duper annoying, and I can tell it's getting worse. But I think that we're practically done. So again, and we are done. And the flickering shall stop. So guys, thanks very much for hanging out this weekend. Again, if you wanted to purchase any of this stuff, it's all on tidalgardens.com/live. All the shipping and logistics emails will probably start going out late Sunday and Monday morning. Most of the shipping is going to be scheduled for Monday, Tuesday, weather permitting. Weather is going to probably be fine here now that we're getting into like the early parts of spring. If you require a different ship date, just send us an email to support, and we will get you on the calendar. Don't worry if you overpaid for shipping, we refund all that stuff. But just as a precaution, if you did pay for multiple instances of shipping, go ahead and just send us an email, and we'll get all that sorted out. But yes, we will get everybody on the calendar in the next couple of days. And the live show, the inventory will stay up and available for at least a few days. We usually start taking it down right around Wednesday. We're not in any huge hurry to take it down. So if there was some stuff that you're just thinking about or want to make sure that your tank is ready for it, you still have a few days to take advantage of that. Also, there is the Easter sale, and I believe it's like 10% off of stuff. So check that out. Also, we're sending out, I think, Easter eggs with like candy and discount stuff. So you can look forward to that as well. All right, guys, that pretty much does it from here. Thank you all again. Hope you enjoyed the April show. And we will see each other again when? When is the next show? Let's take a quick peek at the Z calendar. I will be going, okay, well, where's today? I will be going to Reefapalooza next weekend. And then there's going to be the Reef to Reef sale on the 30th to end the month. And then the next show will be on May the 14th. So you might want to circle May the 14th on your calendar. We will powwow here again. All right, guys. Take care. Stream is over. Bye.